perfect teeth and better skin. They get off on bad decisions when they're dressed to the letter in Sapiano leather. Oh, 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 dressed to the letter with Sapiano leather. Oh, 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 oh. If you didn't go, young and edited to their own privilege. Used to be so different. Now I don't really mind anything to feel fine. Tired of just existing, we're living life the next. Tired of just existing, we're living life the next. Tired of
Wonderful. Well, good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, May 23rd, and a Salem-Keizer School District Budget Committee meeting. We will now call ourselves to order, and I'll ask our Budget Committee Secretary to take attendance of our Budget Committee. Christy, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. When I say your name, please say here. Osvaldo Avia.
Here.
Jacqueline Bechtel. No Jacqueline. Danielle Bethel. I'm not hearing people if there is, can somebody confirm those two are not here?
They're not there.
Okay. Ashley Carson Cottingham.
Here.
Satya Chandragiri.
Here.
Barbara Gio.
Here.
Karina Guzman Ortiz.
Here.
Lisa Harnish.
Here.
Levy Herrera Lopez.
Here.
Marty Hyen.
Here.
Maria Hinojos Cressy.
Here.
Nancy McMorris Addix.
Here.
Oni is not here, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Laura Million. No Laura?
I don't see Laura.
So just so that I'm clear, Jacqueline is not here, Oni and Laura, correct?
Correct. And Danielle.
Correct. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. So I'd like to just say again, buenas tardes, good afternoon, welcome y bienvenidos to the Salem-Keizer School Budget Committee meeting. At times, whether we meet in person or virtual, as we are tonight, we strive to be inclusive, respectful, and welcoming to our students, staff, and educators, administrators, budget committee members, and all community members. We welcome people of all genders, people of African descent, Black, African American, Asian descent, Arab descent, European descent, those who identify as Hispanic, Latinx, people with indigenous to this land, and people with mixed and multiple descents. Languages spoken in our communities are welcome: Spanish, English, indigenous languages, Sign language, Chuukese, Somali, Russian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and many more. People with disabilities, visible or invisible. People of all religions, believers in faiths or creeds. Gay, lesbian, bisexual, heterosexual, pansexual, transgender, queer, two-spirit, or others for whom none of the labels fit. Survivors. Your emotions, joy, bliss, grief, rage, indignation, contentment, disappointment. Your families, genetic and otherwise. Our veterans who proudly served and are currently serving our country. Our elders, those in this room, in our lives, and those who have passed away. People impacted or displaced by war in Ukraine and other violent conflicts. Yes, and finally, we would like to welcome the ancestors who lived in this land where we live and work. Welcome to the spirits of the Santiam, Kalapuya, Siletz, and the Grand Ronde, and the natives who lived in this area before the Europeans came. Welcome, y bienvenidos. And now we'll stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag. And I just forgot the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I haven't had to lead the Pledge of Allegiance in a really long time.
Don't worry about it. It happens to all of us. Like once you're put on the spot, it's like, ah!
My brain just went blank entirely.
It's in there somewhere though.
It is. It is. All right. Well, and now we are here at the public comment for our 2022-23 proposed budget. So we'll open up the public comment portion of the meeting. We did not receive any written testimony. However, the Budget Committee did receive a few emails to the Budget Committee that were passed on to each of you via email. So hopefully you've had a chance to read those. This evening, my understanding is we have one caller. As a reminder to our caller, which hopefully they are online and hopefully somebody can confirm that, our caller will have 3 minutes. And also, caller, just be mindful that we do have our American Sign Language interpreter and our Spanish interpreters. So it'll be, if we could keep that in mind as well. So would is our first caller available?
Our caller has not yet joined the meeting.
Okay. All right. So for a point of order, do we want to, were they given a specific time to join within the window, or?
We encourage them in the directions to sign on at the beginning of the meeting, so I can let you know when they join or if they join.
Okay.
You would like that?
That'll be great. Thank you, Jordan.
Of course.
Thank you.
I could give one little bit of information while people are, if we're waiting to see if she joins. If you, I don't think the caller was going to speak in Spanish, but if you want to be sure that you hear everything in English or everything in Spanish, if you go down to the bottom of your screen and that little world symbol and switch the language you'd prefer to listen to the meeting, you'll hear the whole meeting in your preferred language. So if we have a caller that speaks Spanish and you're on the English channel, you'll hear it in English. If we have a caller that is speaking English and you want to hear it in Spanish, you'll hear our Spanish language interpreters on the other side of this as well. And thank you to Interactio for being here tonight.
Yes, for sure. And thank you for mentioning that. That's a very important detail.
Nancy has her hand up.
Nancy, yes, you do. Yes, Nancy.
Just while we were waiting for the speaker to come on, I just wanted to apologize for not being at the meeting last Tuesday and let folks know that I did listen to the whole meeting So I haven't missed anything that I know of.
Yes, thank you, Nancy, for thank you for listening in, and for you and I talked right after the meeting. So very glad that you were able to do that, and I hope your event went well, and I hope you are enjoying Chicago and your conference, and really thank you for taking time out of your conference time to be with us this evening. All right, so Jordan, do we have our caller?
She has not joined the meeting yet. I can email her and see if she still plans to.
Okay.
Jordan, she says she's here, but she must have not had the right call net. Can you call her? I'll stick her number in the chat.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we'll give just a moment for that technology to, there we are. There's her phone number.
I didn't want to call it out publicly.
Yeah.
Sorry, also while we're waiting, I just want to make sure that for attendance, it's noticed that Laura Millian is on.
Yes, I got her. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, and welcome, Laura.
Lisa Levy has his hand up now.
Levy, thank you.
Thank you. While we're waiting, I just wanted to mention something that I'm just learned about myself. Well, not about myself, but I learned it. Sorry, that besides May being Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, it also happens to be Jewish American Heritage Month. So I wanted to just mention that for any members of our community that are doing any kind of activities in recognition of that month.
Thank you very much, Levy. I appreciate that, calling that out. That's wonderful. Any other announcements while we, anything for the good of the order while we wait for our caller?
I have a question.
Yes, Marty.
I was out of state last week. So for the email questions, I can't remember the details of them. I'd have to go back and look. But I know there were some concerns about a particular elementary school and size of classes. It was not a Title I school. And I believe there was a different concern from the other person. And I was just wondering how is there any feedback that's going to these people? Is any of this information being taken into consideration for the budget? You know, how are we as a budget committee utilizing that information that we got from the public?
Thank you, Marty, for that question. Really appreciate that. Do we have any staff that want to comment on that, or should we wait as part of the superintendent's comments after our testimony?
Either way is great. Why don't I start, since it looks like we've got a couple more minutes for our public comment. The way the staffing ratio works is we take the FTE and the proposed budget, and we allocate it out to schools. In your comments or your feedback that I sent on Friday afternoon, it showed you the class size charts. I think there was something in the email about we took away from a school in order to lower class size at a non-title schools. Our staffing ratio, which you'll see in your book, has always been lower at the elementary level for our title schools than our non-title schools as well. So then what happens is we've allocated staffing. We start watching the enrollment numbers and we save a little bit back to be able to add FTE as needed as we watch the enrollment numbers go up. So where the class size projections are today aren't where they'll be next year, because enrollment changes. And also we'll start really monitoring the kinder enrollment as well, because we have late signups. The separate item, the public comment that was related to a neighborhood looking for some additional pedestrian walking bridges, things like that. We forwarded that on to both the city and the county. We'll also, we've also circled back with the patron, and we'll put it in some information around safe routes to schools as well with that one.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Any other questions or comments? I see blue sky timer is there, so I'm thinking maybe we're close.
I just sent our caller the information by text. This is her first time giving public comment, so
Oh yeah, no
we are
problem.
working with her right now.
Not a problem. It's my first time chairing the budget committee meeting. And I've already gaffed on the pledge, so there we go. Laura, you have a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Just, I guess, to fill the time and to answer a question for me. Christy, I noticed looking at the feedback report that the number of total elementary classrooms for the grades between K to 5th grade have all declined over the years between 2019 to 2022. And yet the classroom ratio for the 25 to 29 has increased. Can you kind of give us more background on why that, when I know that part of the idea is to reduce the staff ratio, student to staff ratio?
Yeah, are you looking at the class size charts? You gave me two different, tell me what you're looking at, sorry.
So, oh yeah, so second page of the follow-up report to last week's meeting. And it's the bottom chart I'm looking at. This kind of gives us the overall summary, elementary schools. And in the first row, it talks about the total number of elementary classrooms, breaks it down into the categories K through 1st and so on. And 2019, for example, we had 244 classrooms, K through 1, and now we're dropping down to 229. The ratio in the 25 to 29, which is still a really high ratio for student to teacher, is gone up significantly. It went from 43 to the projected is 77 of those will be, so we're projecting higher classroom sizes, student teacher ratios. We're seeing a decline in classrooms. Can you just kind of give some background on that? Because that is one of the concerns I do have.
Yeah. So a couple things. One is the chart at the bottom is related to all classrooms, so it mixes in the title and non-title. And so they are a little different between the title and non-title. And you're seeing I have to look at it compared to, because it's all grade levels. So when you were looking at the K1, is that correct?
So I'm looking at K1 was the example I stated, but I'm looking at it across the board. If you look at all the grades up to 5th grade, the 25 to 29 classrooms are actually increasing in the projected budget, which I think, to that community members' comments was kind of one of the concerns. And SIA, as you know, trying to reduce those.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make sure I really heard your question correctly. So what we are seeing is that declining of enrollment at the elementary, which is why when we've been staffing, those staffing ratio assumptions, we haven't changed those staffing ratios. We've layered on the ESSER funds to lower that class size. But we're seeing more at the lower level and more at the middle level. We've been trying to keep those under 30 numbers down. So you can see, or those 30 and over numbers down. So you can see we've kept that at a fairly low percentage. I don't have the numbers of what it would take if we, like if we said, here's our target number. We don't want any class size over this, or we want you to staff at this ratio. I don't know what the amount of FTE that would be needed to bring that down, because we've just staffed at that other ratio. So they do have those 25 to 29 are increasing. And I'm going to ask Director Cobb, because she's really tracks the elementary numbers really carefully, to see if she has anything she wants to add to my comments.
Nothing specifically other than our goal is to keep all classrooms at that 25-27 ratio. Of course, we prefer the 24 and below, but in reality, it's at that 25 to 27, 29 for non-title schools. And what we try to avoid with the unallocated or any additional moves that we need to make at the very end in June or in August, when we come back and we review all of the staffing sheets for all of our schools, is respond to the need of the 30. So every time we see any classroom that is above 30, that's where we would send any unallocated that we could have available to us.
Some more, I guess, another comment on that. Is there a reason we don't shoot for 20 to 25 for a classroom size? Why we're shooting 25 to 30 or 25 to 27?
Just at FTE, the number of FTE that we have to give out gives us that ratio. If we were
so can we change the ratio and shoot for a lower ratio to help close that learning gap, to also help the teachers manage the classrooms better? That the community member that commented, I can attest to when my grandson was in kindergarten, he was in a classroom size that was 30. That's a lot of little kids to handle. So I'm just kind of wondering, why is the ratio not shifted to 20 to 25?
We can, and it would also take, like, our revenue amount is a given. So the question is, then where do we take it from? So and every classroom that's under the 24, in some ways, that means there's a classroom somewhere else that's bumped up because of the kids don't show up equally across every school and every grade level. So we can, and we could, but again, we have to decide, here's our resource, and then where will we take it from?
So that's correct, you're right. Is there an avenue or a spot where you can identify some money? I believe I had submitted a comment or a question earlier on in this process to start trending that ratio down. Not do it all at once, obviously that's quite an impact to a budget, but can we find some funds to say, hey, we're gonna start focusing on reducing that ratio, and maybe we start with the Title I schools because they tend to be more socioeconomically impacted. Is that something that the school can do or the district can do? I'm sorry.
So if we look at our title schools, they are less, sorry, go ahead. You want to go ahead, Ashley, or you want me to finish? Okay. The title schools do have fewer classrooms, and the issue is the revenue is set by the state. The SIA strategies are governed by strategy. So there isn't we've got to get the state school fund number up higher if we want to impact more FTE. And one of the, a couple other districts in the state have hundreds of teachers that are paid for out of local option levies. We don't have a local option levy, like 300, 400, 500 teachers. So that would be a place for revenue, or getting the state school fund up more for revenue.
Okay. Can we look at instructional assistants or aides within the classroom that's a cheaper, more cost-effective alternative and provides, 2 adults to those larger classroom settings?
So You want to answer that question, Christy? And I know that Ashley also has a question. Nancy has a question. Then our caller is on the line too. So,
Can I speak to what I think Lara's getting at first before we answer the second question? So I agree with you, Lara, that it would be really great to start chipping away at that ratio and getting some more teachers into the elementary classrooms across the board. And so could we look at something like at least 10 FTE, and we maybe take it out of the contingency fund this year as a starting point and keep working towards more over time, so long as the legislature keeps us more whole than we've been and that type of thing. But could we put some sort of proposal out on the table to get at what I think Lara and a lot of the members of the public that have weighed in are asking us to do?
I think that could be a really good strategy. I think what I'd like to, Satya, I see your hand. What I'd like to do is hear our public comment, and then I think we can more seamlessly go into our conversation and deliberations about the budget. So if Satya, if you can wait for just until after that, that would be great. Nancy, I know you had your hand up earlier as well. And Laura, will that be okay with you too? Great, awesome. All right, so Jordan, I understand we have our caller.
Yes, our caller tonight is Rita. Rita, you are live, so you may begin when you are ready.
Great, and welcome, Rita. And just as a reminder, Rita, we've got 3 minutes for you, and I think we've got a timer that will be displayed.
You mean my 3 minutes from the 2 years of the pandemic didn't roll over? I'm teasing. Good evening. My name is Rita Glass, and I am sorry that I was having problems, so I apologize for that little technical difficulty, which is definitely user error. So, again, my name is Rita Glass. It's an honor to be here. I first want to thank you all for giving up your time for the budget committee. It's one of my favorite things. I don't know why, but to listen to I really enjoy going to those in person. But tonight I am here on behalf of, and I need to say where I live, right? I live in Northeast Salem, and I am an administrative assistant for the district, and I work at Early College High School and Roberts at Chemeketa at this time. So. And I'm also an ASCII clerical board director at this time as well. I serve in that role. And I'm here this evening to advocate for our school-based health assistants at all levels, at elementary, middle school, and high school. They are not enough hours. They are not permanent hours. They are pieced together usually by an IA who doesn't have full hours, an office staff who needs some additional hours. And what happens is that, unfortunately, we can't tell our students, you can only get injured, you can only take medication, you can only do this between these hours to this hour during the school day when your school-based health assistant is on duty. That's not the way life works, right? And so what's happening is a domino effect. When the school-based health assistant is another assignment or not at work because they are only 1.5 hours, the office staff has to make up that difference and is being pulled out from their duties and to cover. And we will do it because we need to serve our kids, right? But when a parent comes in to do a medication, bring in a new medication, has that form to sign, our school-based health assistant isn't there, office staff have to stop what they're doing, get it, take the medication, lock it up, usually in a place that's not close to the office, and that. We need to, parents have said, and you have all said as well, that the health and well-being of our students is a priority. And we're asking you to make that a priority by funding our school-based health assistants at full time during the open hours of our schools so they can be accessible to parents, to students, and be able to service that time. So I'm still showing 26 minutes on my timer, so I don't know, was my time up? I heard a ring.
Yeah, the bell was the end of your time, but
Okay.
Rita, thank you so much for your coming tonight and persevering through all of the technology challenges. And thank you too for your written information. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be sending another email. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. And Jordan, I just want to make sure we haven't had any other, there've been no other callers, correct?
Nope, that was the only community member that signed up tonight.
Wonderful. All right, thank you. Well, I think with that, what I'd like to do is move us into, I know Christy had some prepared comments based on some of the conversations that we had last time, and then continue our conversation that we were just having about the possibility of augmenting at the elementary level. So with that, Christy, can I just turn it over to you for your comments there?
Yeah, I was going to make a few of the comments related to class size and the other item we heard from a patron out in the Miller-Hauk area. So I'll turn it back to you for deliberations. On the school-based health assistants, the elementary is 1.5 hour gen fund, 4.5 hours out of ESSER. So they're at 6 hours for next year. Middle school is at 4 hours. High school is at 6.5 hours. I think one of the things that's happened is as Rita has raised this as an issue, is maybe the hours have been split up a little bit. So we might need to go back and really get our schools to shift how they're staffing those positions.
Great. Wonderful. All right. So with that, we'll go back to our deliberations unless there's anything else that you had, Christy. Okay. All right. Satya, have your hand up?
Well, thank you very much, Vice Chair Harnish. We're talking about the class size, and then the other question is taking from the reserve fund. My only hope is we don't do anything that next year we have to lay off people. See, that's really important to have an ability to sustain through that. The next important reason to keep a reserve fund is God alone knows what can happen. When the whole world collapsed and we had to close the school and open the school, and the firestorm and the ice storm and everything else, really we need to have some level of ability to contingency money to use it during that time. Like we had to kind of distribute the computers and things like that. So that's another reason we need to always have some amount of reserve. Mm-hmm. So that is not to say we should not do that. But little children need more attention, no doubt about it. 30 kids is like, I salute the teacher who has to do it. It's like very difficult to have 30 little kids in 30 different directions and classroom management. Some countries, like where I come from and other parts of the world, they have 2 shifts, for example. So they have 2 shifts, AM shift, and they overlap. Are there some such models we can explore within the same space so that we keep the ratio a little bit, but consider 2 shifts, at least for some grades, not for a whole school. Thereby, we keep the ratio as little as possible, kind of the better ratio so that the classroom management can be there. And we can stagger the children coming to school. At least we can try it out in 1 or 2 classrooms and see if that helps bring down some of the dysregulation. And then next year, we can bring it back and say, could that be sustained by funding it and scaling it up? My my only ask is don't try this throughout without knowing how it's going to play out. So we can pilot it in 1 or 2 classes where we know that more children come. For a variety of reasons, what happens before they enter kindergarten is really important. So we call it kindergarten. There's a lot of our children are coming with a lot of adversities, and with the pandemic, they're already so dysregulated. So we cannot predict that what happens. But the thing is, can we stagger them and bring down the ratio?
Well, Chair or Satya, I think that's a great idea, and maybe something that we could put on a list for future discussion, and come back to the budget committee conversation for now. But I think that has some merit in looking at some best models and best practices in other school districts. So we'll take a note of that for sure. And Ashley, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to see, back to the question I raised, building off what Lara was talking about. Do we know, so how much is one FTE added to elementary? And if we were proposing something like 10 or more, how much does that eat into our contingency? And is it doable, I guess? I'd like to discuss amongst us based on your answers.
Yeah, let me look up and give you a direct answer on that. So the 10 FTE is right about, gosh, I don't have my chart. Give me 1 minute to look that up.
And Nancy, I see you have your hand up. We'll get to you in just a moment.
While Christy's looking, I know when visiting some of the elementary schools, I think I went to 2 title schools in the last month, and it seems like a lot of the issues are for the kiddos that are, that were in kinder for the beginning of the pandemic. And so there's like kind of this bubble of dysregulation. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to do a little bit more investment for those kids right now to get caught back up and support the teachers who are really trying to get them back to grade level.
So 10 FTE is about $884,000. If you took it out of contingency, it would pull our contingency number down to about 4.5. And I think that's doable. So I think that might be a place to start. It's about 110 or something per, or 80 something per FTE.
Per FTE.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So budget committee, that gives us some food for thought in terms of some numbers. Nancy.
I have a couple of comments. One, I didn't start with my hand up for, but I wanted to respond to what Dr. Chandragiri said about, the kind of split shifts. I went to high school under split shifts, and it was a means of getting more kids into the school when space was an issue, but it didn't solve the problem of teachers, because you couldn't, if you have kids coming half day and then another group coming in the other half day, you're asking teachers to teach their day twice, or, you need twice as many teachers, which is the same issue as that runs our class size issue. So I don't really understand how that's a solution for what is an economically driven problem in the money that we get from the state. The other thing I want to say just for a historical perspective, I started on the school board in 2009. And if you recall, that was the height of the last huge recession. And we spent year after year after year disinvesting in our children. And this is movement in the right direction. And that I think we need to always, as we're looking at these numbers and looking at these class sizes and all of that, recognize that we are on a trajectory that's improving and making up for those years that were horrendous. When you're a parent of a kid in a class that's too big, it doesn't really matter what the history is, but it does seem today like the number of parents who are facing that is significantly less than it was for many, many years. And we should keep that perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it. And Laura, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to follow up. I like what Ashley's thoughts were on focusing on kindergarten, the younger elementary, because I think that can make the most impact. I do want to know, Christy, can you tell me what the cost is for 10 instructional aides compared to full-time accredited teachers, just for a comparison?
Yeah, give me a couple minutes. I know that Sarah's team is listening in and they'll drop me a message with that. So it'll just take a couple minutes.
My other comment is, I guess, on Dr. Chandagriri's. The only time I've seen in kindergarten that kind of program work was back when kindergartners went to school half days, and there would be an AM shift and a PM shift, making it a one whole day for the kindergarten teacher. I don't know how that would be doable when kindergartners and up go to school full time now.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. And thank you for your question about the cost of IAs. So while we're waiting on that piece of information, is there anything else? Any other comments or questions? Let's see, I don't know if it was Nancy or Ashley first. So we'll go with Nancy.
Nancy was pointing at Ashley, but you couldn't really tell that.
Oh, I couldn't tell that.
You don't know
I
that.
was pointing at Levy and Nancy. So.
My screen, you guys were opposite, so.
I just wonder if it's appropriate at this point to make a motion to what it is that Ashley was suggesting.
That would be fine.
Ashley, did you have that language written, or do you want me just to make something up?
I guess I can do it on the fly, or you could do it on the fly.
Either one of us.
Go ahead.
I'm glad to say I move that we add 10 positions to the budget used in primary grades to lower class size in those classes that are over the desired threshold.
And take the dollars from contingency.
And take the dollars from contingency.
Second that
motion.
Okay, so we had 2 seconds. All right, so we've got a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion?
I would like to understand if we're voting on assistant teachers or full-time regular teachers. So I think we need to wait for the numbers first before we figure that out, because we are looking at obviously less money for assistants, and maybe we can get twice as many or 15. And I would like to hear pros and cons as to having an actual teacher versus an aide, just if that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My motion is for teachers,
Yeah.
just so you know.
And I'll go with Ashley and then we'll go to Marty.
On this motion, my question would be, so if there are 10 allocated or 10 additional, then how does the allocation occur? And I know we've talked a lot about the title schools, but also does it mean that you're looking at non-title schools with the whole pot of what you have, the 15 that are unallocated that you proposed in your budget, plus this additional 10, and how that would then, you know, I think we talked about it, but can you just remind me, like, where they would be prioritized with this motion?
If it is K-5 licensed educators, they go into the function 1111, which is K-5. And we then look at every school to determine where are the numbers, have the numbers bumped up, and where should we allocate. If you said we want these in elementary, but we want you to focus on K3 or K1, whatever it is, then we would look at every K1 in the district to make a determination. If it's focused only on title, then we'd only look at title. The only thing you can't tell me is that they're only focused on non-title schools, because we get into some issues with comparability and some federal regulations.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's helpful. And Marty.
Yes, thank you. So I think first I'm a little confused. We're talking about requesting to add that is what I think what the motion is, adding those 10 and using basically our buffer money that we have. And I know we've added nurses a number of years ago, some additional nurses, but I think there was only like 3 or maybe 1 or 2. I can't remember. It wasn't very many. So my concern is certainly I want smaller class sizes like everybody else, but that buffer is there for a reason. And with exploding gas prices and exploding costs of everything, I'm a little concerned. I'm wondering what 10 of the teacher positions, when you add PERS and you add other benefits, what that would cost, and what our buffer, I don't have that in front of me, what it is currently, and how much it would be reduced by that before I could support it. I need to know that.
Okay.
The number I gave you was fully loaded. So the $884,000 fully loaded. So PERS, healthcare, all of that. And then it drops our contingency to 4.5% contingency.
What's left then in the contingency fund, Superintendent?
27 million and a little bit more, 27.9 million.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Satya.
So I still have some questions to clarify. Let's say there are 30 kids in a classroom. You have added 10 more things. The physical building is not going to increase. You're going to have still 30 kids sitting together in a classroom. Perhaps you'll have an additional staff available. So I'm not entirely sure how that is going to make a difference in lowering the class size, because in a given time, the same building, you have now extra staff who can go in and fill in perhaps when somebody is not showed up to work, etc. So the second thing is, let's say we add 10 teachers this time. Next year, we need to be prepared to sustain them. We need to prepare for the next 3 years. Now we may have buffer money to take from, we may have ESSER fund, etc., but they're all going to dry up. So I'm not entirely sure what we are going to achieve by adding 10 extra staff to the existing building with 30 kids in a classroom. The second thing is, are there another way we can think of designing either inside, outside school or different ways of trying to design the school in such a way? If you had, let's say, split shift with extra staff, then of course we can talk about a ratio which is sustainable, or extend the school days beyond what we typically do so that nobody misses anything. We have to really think of models which will really bring down less number of kids in one classroom. And that way they're not kind of so close to each other, bumping into each other. And again,
Point of order.
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not
point of order that we're trying to do discussion on the motion on the table. Just so we try to, I know it's, Robert's rules can be really annoying. So I'm sorry, Director Chandrakiri. I just feel like we should try to finish this motion, but you know, love talking about other ideas too.
I think, I think the other ideas are really important. And what I'm taking away from the point there is we need to think about all the things as we're making the dedication of the 10 FTE should that pass. Barbara.
Why do we have, I guess, can we add more than 10 since we have so much money there? Why? It sounds like it wouldn't have a problem sustaining that 10 at least. So why not more? I know that we heard about, I don't know if maybe Ashley's going to say, wait, that's not part of the talk today, but I'm just, if there's money, tons of money there that we could use for 10, maybe more, why are we waiting, holding on to it? Can we do more? Can we get more than 10? So again, I still don't think that we can really pass anything without really knowing all the numbers as far as assistants versus teachers. But I also would like to hear from somebody, what would the benefit be from having a teacher versus an assistant? Just so I know, is it really going to help the children? I mean, my kids have some assistants in their Title I schools, and I think they're wonderful. But maybe having a new teacher or more teachers would be beneficial. So I'm just curious your perspective.
I have a kind of question that might go with that, Lisa, if you don't mind me just.
Nope, go right ahead.
I was curious about kind of hearing Barbara, and maybe it ties, maybe it doesn't, just thinking about what are the have we been able to fill the primary level positions so far, or have there been remaining vacancies? I know that was an issue at the beginning of the year, and so I'm not quite clear on what that is. And that might, I'm all for supporting those additional 10 positions and also hearing beyond that, but what are we looking at in terms of vacancy and filling those positions so far?
I don't, do we have an answer for that?
Do you want to get through all the questions and then I'll do a quick summary of what
I think that's a great idea. Great idea, Christy. All right. And Karina, did you have anything else to go with? Okay, perfect. Levy.
So one question and a comment, just to make sure that I'm following correctly. So if we add these positions, would they be reserved positions, or would it be actually teachers going into the classroom next fall? So that's a question. And the comment is, I think the district has done really good job managing the contingency fund, and it's coming out of that period that Nancy was talking about, those really bad years where we lost a lot of really good people that were doing a lot of really good work with the community. And I think to one of Satya's points that we got to think about what we put in place this year, if it can be sustained next year. And that's where having a sizable contingency has been helpful. So just because there are $28 million in there doesn't mean that we should use it all up in a year. So that's just the comment.
Yeah, thank you, Levy. And Nancy.
Don't we have rules about our contingency, that our contingency needs to be at a certain level, and that going to 4.5, maybe already we're going under the level that is required, and that it will take board action to allow us to go under. It's been a long time, but my memory is that it used to be 5%. And if we choose to go under 5%, we need the board to make that okay. So I don't think we have, even though that's a big amount of money, I don't think we can just do everything that we would want to do with that pot.
Great. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions before I ask Christy to respond to a couple of the things that have been raised? Or all right.
Okay, so the first answer is, what is an instructional assistant cost? So there, it's about $56,000 for an instructional assistant. That's, again, fully loaded, benefits, PERS, all of that, with versus, I think I said about 88 for a licensed educator. So for 10 IAs, that's about $566,000. If you took both of those, you'd still be bumping down the contingency to about 4.4. But the other thing is, Director Chandragir, you talked about room space. These 10 teachers wouldn't go to one school. They'd be across the district. And because we have declining enrollment at in elementary, we have fewer classrooms, and we have fewer students, so fewer classrooms. Most places they could find a space. So for example, one of our schools used to have 440 students in it, is down to about 285 or 290 now. So with that comes classroom space. So for the initial 10, that's not a classroom space issue. Question around could we fill them? We purposefully have overhired already at elementary because we wanted to grab every amazing educator that was out there, and we know we'll still have some attrition. So right now, we believe we could still fill elementary positions. We couldn't in another, if it were August, that would be different. And then the last thing is the board has a policy around the ending fund balance being 7 to 10%. And we have to remember that it's both the contingency and whatever's left in the ending fund balance, or at the end of the year, that make up that ending fund balance. So contingency plus whatever's left. I think that the original contingency I proposed was around 4.8 or something like that. But it's, I think with that and what we might project in underspending will still come in okay at the ending fund balance. I wouldn't go too much lower. Like 10 would feel okay, 20 would feel too many. In part because if we remember last year in the budget process, we budgeted at $9.4 billion in the state school fund. They only came in with 9.3, and our current cost of service when we rolled things up was we needed about 9.6 or 9.7 from the state. So we've had some reserves and ways to carry forward, but we are facing I don't want to be doom and gloom, but we have got to get into that legislative session next year and demand a state school fund that's fully funding cost of service level. And it's going to be a huge uphill battle. So all that to say, we've already, we came in at 95 million. And we're proposing this 27 million contingency. So we're already eating into the reserves with the proposed budget. That being said, I don't think 10 is the wrong decision at all. I just wouldn't go too much further than that.
Okay.
Chair Harnish, if I can just elaborate on that, Superintendent Perry, how the IAs would impact different, could they run a room? Kind of more to like Barbara's question, want to make sure that's clarified. And I don't, for me, I'm assuming a teacher can run a classroom, right?
Yeah, so thank you. I missed that part of the question. I made a list and I missed one thing. So instructional assistant, we already have instructional assistants assigned to schools. At a certain point with a certain number, and Olga will be able to tell me the number, but we add time, instructional assistant time, if numbers get too high. I think a teacher will tell you an instructional assistant helps. A teacher would probably also tell you that lower class size helps. In that 27 to 29 range, it's nice. When it gets over 30, they'd probably ask you they'd say, we'd rather have lower class size, because the instructional assistant can't do instruction without lesson plans from the teacher, technically shouldn't supervise. They do small groups, but shouldn't supervise the room totally and then give instruction without the teacher, doesn't do parent-teacher conferences, phone calls home, grading, lesson planning, all of that. So and teachers would tell you if every classroom could be under 28 with an instructional assistant, that would be the best model. So it's a both and.
Great, thank you. So then, and then going back to something you said, so I think in our request here that Ashley proposed, and you said, but you have to direct us across the board, Title and non-Title I schools. So do we need to add that language to make sure it's across the entire district? Okay.
No, when you allocate 10 FTE and we move it into 1111, that means then my team looks at every district, every school in the district to decide what's the best location for 10 additional FTE in the staffing.
Prioritizing the highest classrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yep, which we always do in our staffing.
Great. All right, any other discussion on this motion? Laura.
Yeah, I just would have a general question for the entire committee. Ashley had mentioned kindergarten being one of the focus points. Does the committee feel that if we request these 10 FTEs, should we focus in on the lower grades, or should it just be elementary across the board? And I don't have an opinion on it. Well, I guess I do. I would say the lower grades, kindergarten and first, but I would be curious what everybody else thinks on that.
I believe that was my motion. That it was focused on, I don't know if I put a top, but I meant, I wasn't sure whether to go kindergarten 1, 2 or kindergarten 1, but I do think I said the early primary.
You said early elementary is what I wrote down.
I heard primary.
Ashley?
The only thing I would raise is that what we heard from those principals is that it's some of the kiddos that are struggling the most were kindergartners when the pandemic hit. And so they're going through elementary. And so they're going to be in third grade, I believe, third or second this next fall. And so I just feel like it would be great if we could meet a little bit of that need. So K through third would be fine, or just leave it more flexible to the district, elementary though focused.
Do, Nancy, would you like to amend your motion? And Satya and Levy, I see you have a hand. Your hands are up.
I am willing to amend my motion, and I think from what Ashley just said that the need would be to go through third grade.
Okay. And Levy?
I was just gonna say that for me, personally, I don't feel like I have all of the information to say you should focus on this grades or other. So if we were given full information as a committee, like here's where the gaps are and everything, I would feel more comfortable saying, yeah, put it. So I feel like those, I don't know if board members here, that's sort of the funny thing, that sometimes board members have more info than the rest of us. But if it's, I think I would trust the administration to look at where it's needed, taking into consideration the public comments and information we're hearing from the community.
Within the elementary structure.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Satya?
Yeah, I would like to support what our Vice Chair Carson Cardigan said. K to 3, kindergarten to third grade is where we would probably like to focus. because, ideally every grade can have increased staff and less classrooms size, but the critical period where our children can have the highest return on investment would be the little ones. K to 3 would be kindergarten to third grade would be where I would support, because that has to be intentional and targeted rather than diluted. Otherwise, any 10 position can get filled wherever there is a gap, but we have to be intentional in this if we're going to be equitable and that age group of developmental stage. So K to 3 is where I would ask.
Okay, awesome. And Karina.
I want to echo Levy's comments in keeping it broad for the elementary grades and trusting the district to allocate those accordingly. Mm-hmm. I have a first grader who was in preschool when the pandemic hit, and I just know that just seeing him and thinking about the children who were in first grade, the children that were in second grade, and it was such primal learning and time that there's also feeling the impact, and the teachers are experiencing that in the classrooms as well. So I would be open to the primary grades in general and allowing, trusting the district to allocate those accordingly.
Okay. Which is how Nancy originally had her motion. We've had a discussion on possibly amending it. Nancy, I'll ask you, do you want to continue with your official motion that you said first, or do you want to amend it?
I'll withdraw the amendment.
Okay. All right. So the motion, as I understand it at this moment, is that we will move to add 10 additional teaching positions to our elementary to the elementary schools, to the general fund elementary instruction from our contingency, because that's the important piece there, correct? All right. So we have a first.
I'll second motion that.
Thank you, Osvaldo. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. And I will ask our secretary to take the votes.
Okay, when I say your name, please respond just like before, please. Osvaldo?
Aye.
Jacqueline is gone, Danielle is gone. Ashley?
Yes.
Satya?
Yes, please.
Barbara?
Yes.
Karina?
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Give yourself a round of applause. I think we have officially made a motion that will be forwarded to the school board meeting for their at their June 14th meeting. And Christy and then Barbara.
So I think the motion was just about shifting SPE. I think we should need a motion for approval.
I totally jumped the gun.
We're so excited.
I was so excited. Thank you, Christy. Yes. And let's see, Nancy.
I move the budget as amended forward to the school board. I amend moving the budget as amended forward to the school board. That needed a verb somehow.
Second.
Thank you, Nancy. And Marty, thank you.
Would it be okay if I just read the motion out loud, just so we're sure we have, and you tell me if you agree with this. So be it moved on the 23rd of May, 2022, the Budget Committee of the Salem-Keizer School District, Marion County, approves the proposed budget as amended by the Budget Committee for the 22-23 fiscal year in the amount of $1,364,339. Let me start that again. $1,364,339,518, and approves property taxes for the 22-23 fiscal year at the rate of $4.52 per 100,000 of assessed value for the permanent tax rate in support of the general fund in the amount of $62,209,906 for the general obligation bond levy. So, and I put in there as amended. So it's taking all the numbers from the proposed budget and amending the contingency and the elementary instruction by 11 or by 10 FTE, and you are proposing a tax rate for our general obligation bond.
That's very impressive, Christy. I said all that, and I just said it so quietly, you just couldn't hear it.
Yeah, then I got the numbers all mixed up.
Great. So we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Levy.
Yeah, you all moved too fast. I was quick, but I was just going to ask because we did have a few comments about school-based health centers and health support. So I was going to ask if there's anything that might be said to address those comments, or I just didn't want to leave those on the table and not address.
I appreciate that, Levy. Thank you.
We do have 6.5 hours a day at the high school level, 4 hours a day at the elementary or middle level, and 6 hours a day at the elementary level when we combine elementary hours with ESSER. So I think we're okay for next year. I believe what needs to happen though is we really need to look at staffing to be sure that they're allocating to not, a bunch of different people so that there's the time in the office, and we can do that.
That would address the caller's issues then?
She was asking for an addition to the Gen Fund budget for permanent elementary FTE of 6 hours. I think she's probably asking for 2 more hours at the middle level too. If I could, I think that's what she was asking for. Out of ESSER, she's watching those ESSER dollars and worrying that when they drop off, the support to our elementary schools especially will drop off as well. So it's something we should consider moving forward.
For next year?
You were on mute there, Christy.
It's the year after is my recommendation.
Right, but it's something we can certainly have discussions in next year's as well, and how to prepare for that. All right, so we have a first and we have a second. Without seeing any other hands, I'm going to call for a vote.
Okay, Osvaldo. I didn't hear Osvaldo.
That would be a yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Satya?
Yes, please.
Barbara?
Yes, gosh, I touched something, yes.
Karina?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Maria?
Sorry, technical issues. Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
All right. Now I think we get the round of applause for being able to vote this out of committee and move this forward to the school board on June 14th. Do I have that date right?
Look at how happy Sarah's face is right now.
Yay.
She would give you a standing ovation if she could.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I think that concludes our meeting this evening. And if I'm not mistaken, it also will pull off the meeting scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday. So congratulations, everybody. And thank you for your great work and commitment in this process. And Levy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize myself because this is my term is actually ending. But that's not what I wanted to say. Sorry, no. My term is ending, but I think something that I want to say is that it's always sad to me that not enough people show up to these meetings, especially with the size of budget that we're approving. Who I wanted to recognize is folks like Rita who show up every year, and they make comments about the budget. There was another elder member of the community. I don't know if Nancy, you remember her? She was always showing up, and every meeting, every budget committee meeting, and giving comment. And so it's sad to me that not more people show up, and even though we hear people care about schools so much, like the budget is where we put our money where our mouth is. And I think there's been a lot of really good work that's been happening over the last few years. There's still much to improve, but just wanted to recognize those folks that do show up, even if it's only a couple of them.
Thank you. And
thank you, Levy. I was gonna recognize Levy and just allowing the time for you to finish, Chair Harnish, and because I know I didn't want to escape. I was making sure that it's like, wait a minute, there's no more meetings, so we got to do it right now at the moment. So, Levy, I appreciate the time working with you on the school board. I really appreciate all the times that you have been doing it for as long as you have. You're a great champion in our community. I really appreciate all the work that you do. Continue to advocate, and you are inspiring other people to continue to get involved. But yes, we would like to see more. I was expecting more public comment, but so I feel you. And we have 3 more years on this, and we hope to see more participation grow for that. So again, thank you from the school board and from myself. Appreciate all that you do for our children.
Thank you, Osvaldo, and absolutely thank you so much, Levy, for your amazing support and commitment to this district. Satya.
I want to thank Levy and all others who have worked very hard. This is a very complicated process. So, thank you, Lisa, for stepping up. And it's kind of stepping in you and Ani, because this is a very complex. But I really especially wanted to say thank you, Superintendent Perry. This time, I think the budget you have given us a way in which to understand how it will be programmatic way of increasing, so that we could understand, okay, this is for dual diagnosis, which is a strategy-based way of explaining it in this budget, which really has been very helpful for a lot of our community members to visualize how this will make a difference. Specifically two things that I really found very helpful. One is our Vice Chair, Carson Cottingham, and Nancy, you brought up that early years, adding more staff, the little kids part. The second thing is on the dual language, trying to kind of keep that focus. So these are something very interesting and very important steps that as a strategy you are able to explain to everybody in the community. So thank you very much. So this budget that way is special. So this will be a game changer, and we're going to see the results down the road. So Thank you very much. And Lisa, you did a good job. Don't worry.
Not a lot of prep time for me, but yeah.
But you did a good job.
All right. Well, I would just echo that. And Christy, thanks to you and to your amazing team, Sarah, and everybody else who has put so much into this budget process. You really do make it easy to really understand a very complicated budget and understand how things are knit together in service of our children. So thank you. All right. Well, with that, I think I will call this meeting to end.
Call the time.
All right. It is 7:19 and we are coming to a close. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And all is well with Oni. And I told her we just approved.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. All right. Thank you.
Recording.
For more videos and information, go to capitalcommunitymedia.org and follow us on social media.